y'all. I am so excited. Welcome back to the EDD podcast. This is Alicia. Hello. And I am here with Kristy Baranovskis, and we were actually just talking about her last name. I like to make sure I know people's last names. I've been like that since I was a kid. I don't know what that's about, but I like knowing first and last names, and I like pronouncing them properly. And so initially she was saying, hey, you don't have to say it. But I was like, I just need to know. So we have Kristy Baranovskis with Clean Eating with Kristy here on the podcast. Yeah, I am so excited for her to be here. And y'all, just how are you, Kristy? How are things going? Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Things are good. Things are
Yeah.
good. I can't complain. Weather's been really great. School's back in session, so I feel like I have a normal routine now, whatever that looks like.
Right.
But yes, things are going well, very well.
I'm so glad to hear it. And it's so funny because I have a 16-year-old. And so
Mm.
I get that. Like during the summer, because I had my summer off. And so, it was just like, I have no structure. Right. And so now it's like getting
Yes.
back in that structure.
Yeah.
It's great, but it's overwhelming at the same time.
There's definitely pros and cons to it, and it's like all over the place. But I like it because my husband also works from home. He's a contractor, so
Mhm.
he's like kind of all over the place. And I like to have my time at home when I know that I'm just going to like just have my space, even if it's for an hour. That's all. Like that's all I ask for out of life. But when everybody's home and all of the things are happening, it becomes very overwhelming for me. So yeah, I like school structure. That just makes me happy.
Yes, I have to agree. I definitely have to agree. So we are on the same
Yeah.
wavelength when it comes to that. But y'all, I am so excited because Kristy is here because we have been talking about food insecurity in various ways, right? And today, Kristy is here to share with us because with her actual brand, which is Clean Eating with Kristy, she has programs that help mainly women, right?
Yes, mainly women.
Mainly women
Mhm.
with just empowering not only themselves in the kitchen, but also just empowering themselves as it relates to just food and
Mhm.
just their sense of just, I guess, like being worthy, right? In terms of like how they
Yeah.
present themselves
Mhm.
as it relates to like diet and just overall body positivity, right?
Yes. Like that's such a great way to say it. And I think just
Mm-hmm.
the overall confidence
Mm-hmm.
of us, um, it a lot stems, it's crazy how much comes from the kitchen.
Yes.
When we are confident with what we are eating and what we are putting in that body, our body, that confidence exudes in so many other areas of our life.
Yeah.
And when we're constantly questioning, is this too many calories? Is this too many carbohydrates? Should I be eating this? What should I be taking out? That just plays so much in our head. Um, and I just find myself, as well as with other women, it just really, um, it it takes over. It takes
Hmm.
over because especially as moms, right? Moms,
Right.
grandmoms, I work with a lot of grandmoms as well. Um, we're feeding our children. We're always questioning.
Yeah.
And the last thing we want to do when we lay our head down at night is say, okay, what can I feed them better tomorrow that I didn't do today?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we always want to think that, but if that's constantly what's going through our mind, then we're never, we're always searching. um there's just always something, and too, like modeling for our daughters, right? I'm
Yes.
a mom, I have two daughters, and modeling a healthy lifestyle for them. What does that look like? Am I counting calories? Am I, like,
Right.
there's just so many things. And so when we can find freedom in food, when we can um learn about it and how it affects our bodies, and but just truly just enjoy it as well,
Hmm.
um, that makes a really, really big difference in your whole entire day scheme of life, and what you're able to do.
I mean, that's so true. And thank you for like bringing up the fact that a lot of those like insecurities and that sense of like anxiety, because I
Mm,
know like for a lot of people, there's anxiety around food and like what to cook and
Yeah.
like how am I presenting things for my children? Like, am I a good example? Whatever. All that comes from the kitchen. And
Yeah.
it's so wild too, because me growing up, the kitchen was a place where we all came together,
Yep.
and so there's this all this complexity around it, right? Like you love
Mhm.
it, but at the same time, it's just like I wouldn't say you hate it, but maybe some people don't hate it. Let's be serious, but like,
You'd be surprised. There's a lot of women that do. They don't
right,
because they never had that joy when they were growing up, so they don't know
mm,
what that's like.
right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So because like I said, for me, I grew up like on a whole like it's wild because I grew up with this idea of being in the kitchen was like something it was like pristine, like you were invited
Mm.
into the kitchen. It was like, oh my gosh, I get to help, like this is pretty cool, right?
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Because normally kids, if you were invited in, like I said, it was something that was a big deal because the adults that were in there, mainly the women
Mhm.
in my family, they were like, listen, go sit down, we've got this.
Right.
So to know that they other spectrum of this is interesting to me because that's something I just didn't grow up with. So like for women that work with that have that, I guess, like hate around the kitchen, what does that look like in some instances, or maybe it's a consistent kind of thing how people present?
I mean, there's varying degrees of it, and there's
Right.
varying reasons why. Like, I have some women that I work with, and they had one parent, whether it be mom or dad, who primarily did the cooking when they were growing up, and they weren't allowed to help because it was
Mhm.
very much that parent's domain. And so now, being out on their own and raising their own family, they don't know what to do. They don't even know how to grocery shop,
Mm,
right? So there's that, like, uh, the other anxiety too of like, I see a recipe, right? It says that it's quick, it says that it's easy, but I don't know the ingredients or I don't know where to buy them. Like, I don't know what aisle in the store to go to. So I'm just not going to do that then,
mm,
right? So there's that piece of it. And then there's others who avoid the kitchen. They don't want to be in the kitchen because it causes them to stumble. It causes them to overeat.
right.
They don't have control when they're in the kitchen and they don't know how to stop that,
Mm.
as well. So there's a lot of different scenarios and, just backgrounds to how that works for them.
That is so fascinating to me. And I think that also kind of like stems into or leads into rather us talking about your program. It's a kitchen with confidence, right?
Kitchen confidence.
Kitchen.
Yes.
Clearly, I like Alicia. Hello,
It's okay.
kitchen. Hello. Yeah. So like those
Mhm.
types of things would be addressed in that program, right?
Yes, and in
Mhm.
fact, I wrote that program when I first started my business because
Mm.
that is exactly what I was finding was that just starting at the very beginning, even just pantry things, right?
Yeah.
We're so overwhelmed with what's in our pantry. You buy one of those spinny spice racks that has like 24 different spices in it.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, you're using 3 or 4 of them, right?
Yes.
And so but there's all those things in there. So we need to use them. We need to figure it out. And so, really, just walking through the kitchen, it's an 8-week program, and in every week is a different piece of the kitchen, as well as meal planning and meal prepping. Because I am a huge advocate of saving time in the kitchen. I love to cook too, but
Right.
I don't want to spend hours in the kitchen every day.
Right.
So, how can we serve ourselves, serve our family, and also not spend hours in the kitchen, but still make healthy meals?
Right.
So it really pares everything down to the basics. And it's very, very simple. Most of the people that go through it are like,
Mhm.
I did not realize like how much I had and how I didn't need all of those things.
Wow.
Um, just to make it very basic and simple because that's what we need.
Yeah.
We just need simple. We need to know what to do. And then you can build on that if you want to and like explore
Right.
different flavors and textures and like all the things. But if you don't know how to do that first, then we start with the basics. And that's what kitchen confidence is.
That's amazing. And I think like what you were saying is like starting with the basics and keeping it simple. I wonder if like some women, and maybe there are men out there too that are doing this because they might be responsible for the cooking. But I'm like wondering if they're thinking, okay, I have to do this extravagant thing or I have to
Yes.
present, in a certain way in order for my family to like receive me well or love me more. Like, do you
Yeah.
see that?
Well, and so
Mm.
here's what started to happen. It's really interesting. Um, Social media, right,
Yeah.
is huge because you see all of these things made on Instagram and Pinterest,
Hmm.
right? And that's the expectation of that's how it's going to look.
Right.
And right, or somebody else did this thing, right? So I need to do this, or your kids went to somebody else's house and saw this when really it's not the outward appearance of the food, right? Just like is in our bodies, it's
Right.
what's inside it. What is it made of?
Right.
It's not the presentation, it's the overall nutrition and what is in there, even the love that goes into it, right? That's like you can't get that from a restaurant. Um
Right.
as much as the chef loves what they're doing, it's
Right.
so different, right? And so
Hmm.
that's a lot of where the self-worth comes in too,
Hmm.
as a woman, as a mom, as a grandmom,
Right.
um, in the kitchen and being able to cook for your family and accept it, right? And be
Right.
like, this is a nourishing meal for my family. Maybe it's spaghetti and meatballs, but guess what? It's the best that I could do.
Hmm.
And I know that they are going to feel full and satisfied from
Exactly. And that's, I think that's like half, maybe the majority of the battle is just
it.
like saying I did the best that I could, and I,
Yeah.
and and then also knowing that I'm pretty sure, unless your family, well, whatever, we're not gonna go there, but, mm, but, but I'm pretty sure I would want to believe. That's a good way of putting it. I would want to believe that the people that are there to receive that meal will
Mm,
appreciate the fact that you took the time, right?
yes. Yeah. Yep.
You know.
That's that's a big one.
Mm,
That's a big one. Yes.
right.
Which is why I'm a huge advocate as well as to bring your family into the kitchen with you.
Okay.
So my little one, I have two daughters, a 25-year-old and a 10-year-old. Talk about two different lifetimes.
Right.
And I have learned a lot in the
Right.
span of that. But one thing that I made the promise to myself was when I um, was pregnant with my little one was she is going to be with me in the kitchen. She is going to watch me
Mhm.
cook and know how to do this. I did not do that with my older one.
Right.
And there is so much love and attention, right? That we spend together in the kitchen. And
Mhm.
there is an appreciation because she sees the work that is involved in it.
Right.
She's also involved in that as well. And so there's a sense of pride for her too. In, look, daddy, look what I made, right?
Right.
And like, how can you even, like, there's just nothing that compares to that.
Mhm.
And that's, I mean, it's not easy, right? It's a battle. The iPad is really great, and the
Right.
sports and like all of those things, but really when it comes down to it, what is important in your family, and you can take those little tiny moments and teach them so that they know what that is, but they can appreciate, they can respect it.
Mhm.
You can have open conversations with them about fruits and vegetables, they can touch them, right? Like
Mhm.
there's so much of that that's missed as well,
Right.
because we just present food to them and say, here, eat it, but
Right.
they miss all of that other preparation and understanding what it looks like, what it feels like, and that's all
Yeah.
where all the whining and the crying comes in, and
Right.
all of that, and then we get mad, right? Because
Mhm.
they're not eating it. Whereas if we would just take a step back and say, okay, hey, can you just come help me in the kitchen for 5 minutes? We're going to cut the broccoli. How about you help me?
Right.
But right,
Oh,
like, huh, okay,
right.
yeah, let me do that. And then so many other things come out of that.
And that's so like well put, and that like now it's like a light bulb. Like I have a 16-year-old. I does she'll cook something like if we're not around, right?
Right.
But, like, thinking about, like, how much I incorporate her into my cooking, it's
Mm,
pretty minimal because, like I said, I grew up with that mentality of,
yeah.
"I've got it, I'll handle it." I mean, I would watch the older people in my family cook, so I figured out how to cook, and sometimes,
Hmm.
like I said, if we were appointed that amazing time. I mean, like, so I had the opportunity to do that, but
Hmm.
on a consistent basis, no. And I see myself basically falling in that same
Yeah.
pattern because
Pattern.
that's just what I knew, you know?
Yeah.
It's
And it's so interesting, right? Because also when you stop and you think about it, kitchen skills are lifelong skills.
yes.
And when our children go out on their own, as much as we, that's going to tug at our hearts and we want them to stay and all of
Mhm.
those things, I want my daughter to be able to cook a meal so
Yes.
that she knows how to do that, right?
Right.
And or when she goes over to somebody's house, she can ask, "Hey, can I help you?" I know how to do that too. Like there's just so many when we think the long term of what it does in the kitchen, how that's going to help them serve them when their families later too,
Right.
right? What that looks like. So that's, I also like to translate it into that too, because it's lifelong skills.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's so true. Thank you for sharing that with me. And I'm now to kind of get my life together here and like I'm so serious. I was like, Alicia, what are you doing? Like, get it together
Oh
already.
no.
You know, but like, but another thing is like, how did you get started? Like in, you know, wanting to like, how did this become your passion? That's what I'm trying to say. How did you get into this? Where did this passion come from? This is like so cool to me.
Yeah, so interesting enough, my dad he's a cook.
Uh-huh.
And so he actually did all the cooking when we were growing up, not my mom. My mom was more of like the casseroles and like combining everything together.
Right.
Um, but I spent 9 years of my formative life or my formative years in Kenya, East Africa. My
Oh,
parents were
amazing.
missionaries.
Wow.
And it's funny because I was reflecting on this the other day. So the flavors and the foods that I was exposed to as a young child,
Mhm.
you know, you just don't find
Right.
here in the US. I'm from Canada, and like you didn't find that either. But
Right.
I think I've always loved food, so that's where the emotional eating came in too, right? Like
Right.
I love food. I love it. I love it. Um, when my mom was diagnosed, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. I like a flip was in me, and I was like, wait
Mm.
a minute, there's got to be something that like I've got to like do something healthy.
Right.
I don't know why my screen does that.
It's like, we
I know.
hear you. We hear you,
Yeah, we got
Christy.
you. Um, so I kind of flipped it, and that's
Uh-huh.
when I did a lot of like experimenting with different flavors, different foods. I was
Mhm.
a raw vegan for a while. I was a vegetarian, like kind of all of these things. And seeing my dad in the kitchen be able to experiment with flavors, I think that's a lot of where it came in. But I
Mm.
also knew that when I was um, starting my weight loss journey, I did not want to be bored with food. I'm always afraid. It's a fear to this day that
Mhm.
I will not want to eat what I make because it seems boring to me.
Mm.
And so I'm always looking for recipes that are exciting, that like, have tons of flavors in them and different
Right.
vegetables. And you give me a vegetable, I can give you 10 different ways to make it
Right.
because I've just kind of made that my like experiment with it.
Mhm.
And so that's just like I've kind of always been a foodie, and then when I went through my health coaching certification, I combined the two, right? Like I was
Right.
like, "Oh, this is what food means. This is what food does to the body."
Mhm.
And then that's where I like started to combine then all of that knowledge with the food that I was making.
Right.
Um and I guess like transposed into, what I do, but
Right.
I love I love flavor. I love to be excited by food. Like if we talk about like broccoli, chicken, grilled chicken and brown rice, like I would die. Like I could not. Please don't give me that 3 times a day because I cannot. But you give
Right.
me mangoes and curry and
Mm.
like all of those things, I am all over that, and I definitely will find a way to make it so that I can eat
Right.
that every single day.
She's like, "Please and thank you." Like
Exactly. Um, yeah. So I'm a foodie to the heart, and I
Right.
will transpose that into however I can to make it work for me.
Right. I love that. And so, like, for women that, because when you said the broccoli,
Yep.
like, and chicken, and like it's basically kind of like almost like a, I hate to say it, but like a bland type of
Yeah.
meal.
Yeah.
For people who have grown up thinking that that's the way to maintain their weight, and they can't, deviate from that. In
Yeah.
your program, how do you kind of like bring them into the fold and be like, it's okay, you can venture out? Like, how does that work?
It's hard.
Right.
It's really hard because the women that I work with, they're coming from the diet culture.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about today, actually, on one of our group coaching calls was we're so used to taking away and restricting when it
Mm,
comes to weight loss and when it comes to our diets and our health, right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're no carbs, no alcohol, like all these things. We restrict. When in reality, it's more of like, let's take the same concept of it, the same idea of it, the carbs, the protein, and the fruits and vegetables, the fiber, and how can we add into that,
mm,
right? So I like to use an add-in mindset. However, it's something that takes time
yeah.
to be able to comprehend and not be afraid of. Like, I have women that are very afraid of it. And so it's a lot of processes. It's a lot of, okay, let's talk through this. Let's understand, why we're doing this for
Right.
your body and what exactly you want for that. And the results that they get are amazing once
Yeah.
they start to do it consistently, and once they start to like understand that, oh, I need to be eating because my
Right.
body needs fuel, and when I eat more I actually do lose weight and my body composition changes. That's a really like, it's a fine line with them, but once they
Right.
start to see it, it's like, oh yes, like they've got it, and they understand it for themselves then.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then, like, because I think for a lot of people, and even myself, like, even though I grew up in a home where there were like no boundaries on all and on so many levels, but like, seriously,
That's another podcast.
that's a whole other, like, the boundaries. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
But like, seriously, but just not having boundaries around food,
Yeah.
and for those who do have boundaries around food, it's just like it's. I'm just always so like fascinated by it because it's like I just didn't have that, and so all that to say, people like me that come into your program, what does that look like? Because I mean, seriously, because I literally grew up like the refrigerator was just, it was open, it was free reign, like you could do whatever you
Right.
wanted, like there was just, but at the same time, you're struggling with all the other traumas that you're dealing with. I'm an emotional eater, binge eating, all because of unresolved trauma that happened in my life. And this
Mhm.
refrigerator is my friend because food doesn't hate
Yeah.
me, it doesn't judge
It, it
me,
it feels
it feels
good,
great,
like a
right?
warm hug on the inside. Oh yeah, I got you. I know.
Right. So, like, for people like me that would join a program like yours, how can you convince me that I kind of, not that I should restrict, obviously, but that I need to kind of reel it in? Like, girl, let's get this together.
Well, so one of the things that I'm going to do, first of all, I'm not going to convince you because
Okay.
you have to see that for yourself, right?
Right.
But
Right.
what I am going to do is I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what that looks like.
Mm.
And you would be an active participant in the
Right.
process, right?
Okay.
Because, and that's a really big deal too,
Hmm.
because I actually make my clients sign a contract when they come into any of my programs,
Yeah.
because I want them to understand that this is not just, it's not just Weight Watchers. I'm not just giving you points for the day and go ahead
Hmm.
and add up your points and then call it a day, right?
Right.
It's an active process where you are going to learn how the food you're eating affects your body, how you feel,
Hmm.
and so I don't use measurements at all.
Okay.
I do not, because so many of us have past trauma from measurements, have
Yes.
past trauma from calories, from points, from little colored containers, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've done it all.
Right.
So I um, we do it for 7 days to start with. It's very basic. All I want to know is what you are eating. I don't need to know the size. I don't need to know
Right.
anything. I just need to know what you are eating. So you just write that out. What time of day you are eating it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know your mood when you eat it.
Mm.
Mhm. So,
Yes.
are you mad? Are you angry? Are you confused? Are you, anxious? Like all of those things. And then half an hour after you eat it, I want to know your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
5, 6 being like, it's okay. 10 being like, woo, I'm going to go run a marathon. 1 is like lethargic.
Right.
Um, we do that for 7 days to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, we will carry that through the time that we are working together, because what that does is that tells me a story. And
Yeah.
it tells me a story of what how you are feeling because of the food that you are eating, right? And then we can gauge the time, we can gauge what you're eating. And what is really, really cool is that over the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, the mood changes, the
Mm.
energy level changes, the time that you're eating changes, because what you're doing, right? It's very intuitive too, because you're stopping for a second and you're saying, okay, wait a minute. How am I feeling right now?
Yes.
What is happening? And it's interesting because a lot of the women at the beginning, they're like, I don't know. Like, what do you mean when it comes to mood? What does that mean?
Mm.
Because we don't stop to think about it, right? Eating is
Right.
very mechanical for us.
Right.
Um, and so we don't stop to think about how we're eating. I give a list. There's probably like 30 different moods on that list.
Right.
Like, take a look and see. And then they're able to tell me, they're like, oh my gosh, Kristy, the weekends are really bad for me because that's when my husband's home.
Mm.
And if we are disagreeing, that's when I go to the fridge,
Yeah.
right? That's when I eat. The weeks during the week is great because I have my, my set schedule. So then we're able to be like, okay, so let's make a plan. And this is what we do. This is
Right.
what you do. This is how you cope, right? You don't open the fridge, you open the door and you go for a walk,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like those things. So that's what we look at. And once you understand too that it's a story about you, it's a story about your life, and you get to rewrite that story every single day,
Yeah.
that's powerful,
Yeah.
because most women don't feel like they have the power to do that. They don't feel like they have the control to do that, right?
Right.
There's so many things that are pressing,
Right.
but that is their story. They get that and they can rewrite that and make those choices.
I love that. And I love the fact that you mentioned it in a way of it's their story, because
Mhm.
I don't know that a lot of people even think of themselves as having a story. We're
They
just kind of
don't.
like going through the motions of life. We're just kind of like, just today's Monday, get up,
Yeah,
do this, do that. Yeah, like
that's
seriously.
it. No, you're right. You were right. Yeah.
And I think if more people thought of themselves as having their own story and their own identity, I think a lot of women have lost
Yes.
that.
Oh, that's huge. Yes.
Because for the longest, I was just Amaris's mom. Like people
Hmm.
would come up to me, they didn't know my name. Like, hey, Amaris's mom. And I was just like, okay, eventually somebody will know that my name is Alicia. Like, I hope. Like, I am a person. Like, I do have thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
I like things. I don't just, I'm not just my daughter's chauffeur to all the play dates. Like,
Hello. Yeah.
right.
No, you're right.
It's so important. And like you said, because that part of our lives is mechanical as
Mhm.
well. Food is mechanical. Like everything is just like boom, boom, boom. And when we do have those emotions like that, it's just easy to go to that refrigerator because it's just a part of kind of like who we are anyway. So it's like, go on over
Yep.
here and get these Twinkies and just make it happen. Like seriously.
Yeah, and especially think of it like if that's how we've grown up, right? And we're bringing that into our homes
Right.
without like literally drawing the line and saying, okay, wait a minute. I don't like how this feels.
Yes.
I don't like this. And what can I do to change it?
Hmm.
Um, that's where I think the other piece to empower her is like I am helping these women change generations of patterns and behaviors and routines.
Mm,
And many of the women that I work with, they're grandmoms and they're very involved in their grandchildren's lives in one way or another for one
right,
reason or another. And it's so important for them to be able to do this because they feel guilty. They feel like they didn't do a good enough job, good enough, quote unquote, right?
right.
With their own children. This is their second chance. They
Mm,
get to do this,
love
with that. And that's quite honestly how I feel with my little one is she's my second chance.
it. Aw,
I get a chance to do this, but also to show other women, moms, grandmoms, how they can do this easily as
right.
well and raise their family differently than how they were raised.
And that's something else I really want to talk about this Empower Her program because seriously, because I love that so many women now are stepping up and,
Oh, yeah.
taking ownership of their lives,
Hmm.
right? And joining programs like this and saying, enough's enough. I
Hmm.
need to take care of myself. And here is Empower Her. Here is a program that's gonna, allow me to really just, not just step up to being who I am, but also just allowing me to just challenge myself in ways that I've
Yeah.
never done before, right?
Yeah.
And so for women who have dealt with like generational, I guess you would call it like a trauma type of thing or whatever as it relates to eating, like how does that, present itself in a way of, you know, them trying to maintain that on a daily basis? And I'm asking it in that way because they might have like that mother or those aunts still in their
Yep.
lives, and then they're changing things, and it's like these people that are in their lives are like, "What are you doing? Like, who do like now you think
Yeah.
you're better than us? Like, how dare you? You know, like what does that look? Have you seen
Yeah.
that? What does that look like?
I have. I have. And there's a feeling of helplessness.
Mm,
And sometimes that's a very big driver a lot of times
yeah,
to why personally we make choices because we see our family member, we see that person, we're like, there's no way, come hell or high water, that
yeah,
I want to, be in that situation. So you will do everything under the sun to avoid that.
right,
That's trauma in itself.
right,
But in learning how to empower yourself,
mm-hmm.
how to be confident in yourself with food, that's a really big,
Yes,
really big deal. I shared with you prior to the show, but like I had a woman the other night on our group coaching call. She said, Kristy, I have never thought of fuel or food as fuel.
mm-hmm.
Um, I am nervous to start exercising because I know I'm going to get hungry and then I'm going to have to eat more.
Right,
And that, like, just even the way that she phrased that, right, was like, for me, I just had to sit with that for a minute because I
yeah,
was like, that speaks volumes right there for
right,
so many of us. And there's that fear
mm-hmm.
of if I eat another of
Right,
this, I'm going to step on the scale tomorrow and it's going to be higher.
right,
Right. And so it is an entire process.
yeah,
Um, that we work through. It's a safe space though as well. And
right,
that is really it's when we look at it, it's a 12-week program,
mm-hmm.
which is really laying the foundation. Like that's really truly what we are doing because if you think about it, years and years, sometimes decades of us thinking a certain way, doing certain things, it's going
Right,
to take more than 12 weeks, 3 months to undo and to relearn. But when you're in a space, when you're in a safe space like that, and you can verbalize that,
mm,
right? And like have people who can like just support you in that process and not laugh at you or say, oh, you're crazy. Stop
yeah,
thinking that. Just go, go ahead. No, like that's a valid feeling. That is
yeah,
a truly valid feeling. Let's think about that and let's dive into this.
yeah,
Right. And let's kind of break that down layer by layer because there's
right,
so many layers on that too.
right.
Um, but I mean, it's a process, and that is why I don't like somebody will come to me and say, "Okay, just, tell me what to do."
Mm.
I
Yeah.
can't. Every body, like every body is different, right?
Yeah.
And what works for me might not work for you.
Mhm.
And that's why we have to explore it. That's why we have to talk about it. That's why we have to look at it. That's why you have to be open and vulnerable with me and show me what you are doing. So
Mhm.
then I can be that like eye above and be like, okay, what if we just tweak this?
Right.
Right? Or what if we take out this and we add in this? I'm
Mhm.
never just going to take things out. I'm always going to give you something more
Right.
because food is life as far as I'm
Right.
concerned. And I want you to enjoy it. I want you to love it. And so just creating a new relationship with food, um, healing your relationship with food, that's a
Yeah.
really big piece of it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think a lot of women, that's where when it comes to just the whole eating thing, it's like that healing.
Yeah.
Healing ourselves of our whatever relationship we had with food prior.
Hmm.
Because like I said before, like well, I didn't say this, but I've always struggled with my weight. Like
Mm.
I've always been overweight.
Hmm.
And when I would see thinner people, I would just think, wow, they have it all figured out.
Right.
Like they know exactly how to eat. They have the exercise game down to the T.
Hmm.
And here I am over here just meandering with my little Debbie cakes and barely walk around the block. Like, what is
Yeah.
it? And then I find out from other people that I'm like looking at that are thinner, they have their own battle
Yeah.
with, restriction and, maybe purging or whatever that looks like. And not to say that everyone that was, a thinner person had that, but then
Hmm.
when I did find out that thinner people did have issues around eating, I was like, oh my gosh, we're all struggling in some way. It might
Yeah.
not be the same thing, but
Hmm.
we all have some type of like situation around food that is affecting us negatively. And it's like,
Yeah.
who knew? Like, who knew?
Right. Because nobody talks about it.
Right.
Nobody talks about it. It's the way, that you were taught to cope
Yes.
or, whatever it is. And so, and especially like I find the women that are in Empower Her, they're 40 and up, right?
Mm,
It's hard to make changes at that age.
right.
It's hard because your family has seen you fail, let's say, for
Yeah.
how many times, and they're like, here you go again,
Right.
something new. This one's
Hmm.
not going to work either. Right. And so you have all those voices in your back of your head, and you're like, it's probably just easier just to count my calories or count my points. And I'm just going to stick with that because that's what I know. But
Hmm.
it's still not working.
Right.
Right. And so to be able to actually have a system and a method that I've been using this method for 15 years
Yeah.
myself,
Right.
right? And so it's tried and it's true.
Right.
And it's something that when I find myself, getting a little too, like, woo, like we're
Right.
enjoying too much food over here, then I'm like,
Right.
okay, rein it in, Kristy, go back. And I do the same thing. I write down the food, what
Right.
time I'm eating, how I'm
Mhm.
feeling, right? So, like that same process. So, you can go back and you can use it again. It's not going to go out of style, it's not going to go out of date. And for whatever season of life you're in, you get to use that.
And I love that because I feel like so many women who have been on, all these different fad diets and even the programs, like
Mm,
Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, whatever, we see the quote unquote failure in it, right? But
mhm.
somehow we just keep going back to it. Like the next time it's going to we'll figure it out this time. Like,
Yeah,
and it's not so much that we can't do it. It's just not a sustainable thing and it's not
right.
realistic. And I think that's what more people need to kind of like come to terms with. Like it's
Yeah,
a lot of this stuff is not realistic. Like, yeah, you can do it,
yeah.
right? But then it's like then
But
you have
good
to work
luck.
hard. But good luck, right? Good luck. Like, seriously. But you
Yeah,
still have to live your life. You still have to figure out ways to make it work with family and just
yeah,
enjoying vacations or whatever. It's like because I feel like a lot of times with these programs, the moment you go off of it, it's like you have this. at least for me, I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, but
Hmm.
when I would quote unquote fall off the wagon, right? Then the shame, the guilt would come in.
Yep.
And then I'm just completely off the wagon. Then I'm 30 pounds, heavier than what I was when I first started.
Hmm.
But then somehow I just find myself, if I don't go back to Weight Watchers, okay, let me try Jenny Craig this time. And it's like the like,
Same thing.
same thing.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yeah. It's because that's what we're marketed.
Yes.
That's what we're marketed. And so, I've learned a huge, since owning my own business now, I have learned a heck of a lot about marketing and, like all of those
Right.
things, right? But women are emotional buyers.
Mm. Yeah.
And so we see something and we're like, oh, yeah, wait, she's 45. I'm 45 too. I can do that. Let me
Yeah.
do that. Right.
Right.
Forgetting that, like, you know, whatever, like you said, like real life, sustainable.
Right.
And that's, I think deep down, right? That's what we want. We want something sustainable. We want
Right.
something long term. And I that's why I love both Kitchen Confidence and Empower Her
Right.
because they are sustainable. They will not go out of style.
Yeah.
I may redo the covers on them, or something like that, but
Right.
the methods work, the processes work,
Right.
and you don't have to buy something else. Like,
Yes.
right? That's it. And I'm not gonna tell you anything else because
Right.
you're going to have it. But what you have to do, and this is where the mindset shift comes in, and I know this,
Yeah.
um the work. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
What we want is we want the results without doing the work,
Yeah.
and that's the gap. That's the
Yeah.
gap. And I love when people say, yes, I'm ready to do it, I know what I have to do, I'm ready to do it,
Right.
rather than the ones that are like, just give me a plan, just Kristy, write me a meal plan and tell me what to do.
Right.
No,
You're not
because
ready.
you're going to be back in 8 weeks again,
Right.
and then you haven't learned anything, right?
Right.
So, like, that's I'm a teacher by
Mhm.
trade. That's
Right.
what I went to school for. I'm a teacher. I want to teach you. I want to show you. I
Mhm.
want you to be able to do this yourself.
Right.
Um, just now, my classroom is the kitchen.
I love I love that. No, I love that. And it's so funny as you were saying that, like almost like a light bulb, well, not almost, a light bulb did go off in my head. It was like, oh my goodness. I think to some degree, not completely, but I think that's one of the things too. We have been taught through diet culture that these plans, like you get a plan from whatever Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, you follow that to the T, and then when people come into programs like yours, it's like, oh, you don't have a plan for me? Like I want to be on autopilot with this. Like I don't want
That's
to have
it.
to think for myself and look into myself to figure out all this. That just hit me. It's
Because
like, oh my gosh, that's what it is.
it is, because that's where the work is.
Yes.
Right? I heard something today on another podcast that I was listening to,
Uh-huh.
and it was so good because I was like, oh, like nailed
Yeah.
it on the head. She said, we wish for the strength, but we don't wish for the conditions in which strength builds.
Wow.
Isn't that
Yes.
amazing?
That is amazing.
And I was like, that can relate to so many different avenues in life, specifically for me in
Right.
the kitchen with food. Like, we wish for the strength, the willpower to say, no, I'm not going to eat that.
Right.
But we don't wish for all of the things that I'm taught along the way to be able to do that.
Right, exactly. It's that journey. It's like we wanna get to the destination. We don't wanna
Yeah,
live through that journey, and it's
I
because the
know.
journey sometimes can be really rough. It's like, yikesy,
It's
like,
going to be hard as heck.
exactly. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
unbelievable. So, listen, Christy, this has been awesome.
It's
I've
been fun.
loved this. Seriously, I'm not even joking. I love this. But I wanted to ask before we go, for
Mhm,
someone who is interested in either program, right?
mhm,
Would you I wouldn't say would you encourage, like, someone who's, like, interested in, kitchen confidence,
mhm,
them then circling back and saying, "You know what? Maybe I need to be an empower her," or vice
mhm.
versa. How I guess in terms of, like, I don't wanna say pitch, but yeah, pitch. It's what
Yeah,
it is. It's what it is. Like,
yeah.
call it what it is. What would that be like in terms of, like, sharing with this person why okay, you did kitchen confidence, but I think now empower her is your thing
Yep.
because what we have shared or what you shared with me, um, this program will be life changing for you.
Right. So, what I love, I actually have some right now who are in Empower Her that started with me in Kitchen Confidence.
Right.
So, Kitchen Confidence is the basics.
Right.
I like it's for anybody 20 to 60.
Yeah.
And what we do is we set up your kitchen, we get you set up, so you're feeling confident in the kitchen. That's why it's called Kitchen Confidence.
Right.
And then the Empower Her piece of it is we then take it 1, 2, 3 steps further, because not only is it nutrition, it's a holistic program that also incorporates exercise as well as
Mm,
mindset.
nice.
So now that you have your kitchen in Kitchen Confidence set up for success,
Mhm.
you are going to be able to, take what you're learning and Empower Her and be able to go straight to your kitchen and, make the meals that we talked about, pull those recipes, but now you're going to be taking it a step further for your future self,
Yeah.
because it's not just about food, right? It's
Mhm.
about our health, our lifestyle, our mindset, and that involves exercise, that involves movement. And so all of that is wrapped in together. So actually, the first 3 weeks of Empower Her are food and nutrition.
Mm.
The second 4 weeks, what we're entering in right now, is exercise and movement. And then the last 4 weeks are combining everything together, building a sustainable plan so that at the end of the 12 weeks, you can then go and continue with what you've done for the last 12 weeks with the exercise and food and
That is
mindset.
that is beautiful. Like
Thank
it is,
you.
because it's like I think so many people think all of these things are disconnected.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it's like, no, all of this has to come together in order to create who you are, and to be who you are. Like, we
Yeah.
can't continue to separate all these things. Like, I think even because I'm a nurse,
Hmm.
and a lot of people kind of think of body systems as separate. Like, your brain is here, your heart. It's like it all works together. Like,
It's like one big, like, functioning computer, right?
right, it's like one
Yes.
one big machine that
Yeah.
if one part breaks, it's you're not going to function properly. And I think that's
Yeah.
just with everything in life. It's like we have to realize that really nothing is separate. We have to just bring it all together in order for us to function as decent
Yeah.
human beings. Like, like whatever.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
it's different puzzle pieces that come together,
Yes.
right? And that's what I've been talking to the women about and saying, okay, so our first puzzle piece, this is the nutrition, this is the food part. Now we're going to add another part. But guess what? If you don't have the food and nutrition part, the exercise and movement isn't going to be as easy. It's not going to flow as much because we're not fueling our body as well, right?
Yes.
So like there is all of that. But 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that because I didn't know that either.
Mhm.
Now, through my own journey, I'm like, oh, aha, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the things that we've learned through our own journeys, that's where we get to then help support, guide other women in that process too, so that they can experience the exact same amazing feelings.
Yeah. I love this. I love everything just in terms of like what you've shared about your program, and just talking with you. Like, Kristy, you're a cool person. I love this. Like,
Oh, thanks.
no, seriously, I love this.
You're pretty awesome.
I try. Y'all, clean eating with Kristy. This has been an amazing conversation. But before we go, please let everyone know where they can find you, social media, websites. Yeah, take it away.
Instagram is probably the best place to find me.
Okay.
And it's Clean Eating with Kristy. So Kristy with a K and clean with a K.
Hmm.
So I keep it like that. And that's my Instagram handle, Clean Eating with Kristy. You can message me there. My stories are pretty much about Empower Her. They're about kitchen confidence. I throw in some meals, random meals every now and then, what I'm making. So you'll get to know a lot about me there. But Clean Eating with Kristy, I'd love to chat with any of you.
Awesome. And I'll share this information in the show notes as well. Oh my
Perfect.
gosh, Kristy, this was so awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I hope you could come back sometime.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Oh, awesome. Y'all, this was great. I had such a great time. And thank y'all for listening to this week's episode of Eating Me Podcast. I'll see y'all next week. Thank you so much, Kristy.
Thank you.